Welcome to Let's Talk Tech with NVTC, a digital series exploring tech's most notable trends, new innovations, digital transformations, lean agile principles and mindsets, the future of work, and more. We'll introduce next-gen leaders from member companies of the Northern Virginia Technology Council and learn about the great impact they are making in our region. I'm your host, Philip Nathram. Welcome to Let's Talk Tech with NVTC. Today's episode will feature Maktub Limitless, JaJuan Smart, and Dr. Marcellues Hall. And as always, we'll have our Did You Know section at the end. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Accenture, American Systems, Consumer Technology Association, General Dynamics Information Technology, ICF, MITRE, TalkTech, and our media partner, iHeartMedia. You can find all of our episodes on Wonk FM and the DC Local Leaders podcast. Now, I'm so excited to introduce today's speakers, JaJuan Smart, founding partner and managing member, along with Dr. Marcellues Hall, Vice President and Director of Education and Training at Maktub Limitless. We're going to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and its application to our 4 spheres of life. Please welcome JaJuan and Marcellues. Well, JaJuan, Marcellues, welcome to Let's Talk Tech with NVTC.
Thrilled to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Hall, you're coming all the way from England, right?
Yes, sir, I am. Long way.
Yeah, but we're glad to have you here. And JaJuan, you're down in Austin?
That is correct.
Yeah, well, we're glad you're here. You know, right away, one of the first questions I think a lot of us have is this name. It's so different and it has some meaning. What does Muktube mean?
Maktub is Arabic and it has a literal translation of it is written. So when you combine the two together, Maktub and Limitless, we're conveying the message that it is written to be limitless for as far as individuals as well as groups.
Yeah, so it was written. So, you know, there's a lot of history that we want to get into about the two of you and how you came to meet each other. But, you know, this phrase, or it was written, what is it about that resonates with both of you and why you thought it would be the best name to represent what your overall mission is and what you're trying to accomplish?
All right, Phil, you ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right, so the universe was created approximately 13 to 14 billion years ago. And with the creation of the universe came the introduction of nucleosynthesis, which is the creation of elements. So as stars went supernova and the next generation of stars were created, it ultimately served the purpose of creating human life, as we're comprised of that stardust from eons ago. And therefore, that limitless and boundless energy that is from those stars is embodied within us. And so DE&I, we feel like DE&I helps unlock that unlimited potential that's ingrained in all of us.
Is that why you both came together and was like, you know what? How did you find this word though? Like, I mean, how did you look it up to come up with that specific word, meaning that specific thing? What was it about it that stuck out to you?
So Muktube was first introduced to me in a book, my favorite book, called The Alchemist. And within that book, while he was going on his journey, his personal legend, it was told to him that Muktube, and that meant it was written for you to go on whatever quest that you're going on, serve whatever purposes that you have. And for me, it was just a matter of, okay, what can this be attributed to? So when DEI was introduced to me, it was an automatic go.
Yeah. Now, you know, what's interesting about the two of you is that you have this very unique background individually. You had a very specific circumstance of how you met each other. So I'd love to hear a little bit about, you know, maybe Dr. Hall, kind of what you've been up to, but I think and also JaJuan and your experiences, because they're different and somehow you've had this common thread running between the two of you to bring you together.
So I'm going to tell the truth because, you know, he has variations to the story. No, but seriously, it was a friend of mine and an acquaintance of his. He was having a housewarming or a gathering at his house while we were both stationed in England. And we were both in the kitchen, and the big debate at that time was who will win in a boxing match between Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao. Dr. Hall, he sided with Manny Pacquiao, citing his speed, his power, his relentlessness. Me, I attributed Floyd Mayweather's ring IQ, his defense, and his overall cat-like reflexes as the winner of the match. So, I mean, we know how that ended up playing out. So I was right. Dr. Hall was wrong. But nevertheless, we exchanged numbers, and he came over the next day and he said, "Hey, man, you mind if I come over and cook?" I found that pretty odd. Who comes over at another person's house and cook? But what I didn't know was that's part of his culture. That's part of his gratitude for accepting your for being hospitable. And so as he cooked, we conversed over drinks and everything else, but we started knowing who each other were based on our backgrounds. We had a lot of similarities there. His insights, we just exchanged a lot of intellectual ideals, even philosophies, and from there our relationship continued to grow. He automatically became my best friend and my brother, and now we're colleagues with each other.
Yeah. So, Dr. Hall, I mean, you're in England, but so you both. Well, let's just go back. So you mentioned your service. You were both in the Air Force, so thank you both for your service. Absolutely. Around what year was this when you guys met? And let's talk about how you got there in the first place, because you're actually from the United States, right?
Yes, I am. Year 2011. Was it 11? 2011, yeah.
Around the fight, yeah, that makes sense.
2011. Yeah, so I was already over there. So I had gotten there. I arrived there in 2009. I was overseas in a different location. Then I got sent there to a reconnaissance unit, and yeah, so I was already set up, placed there. So we established there, got acquainted there, and it's just what we went through because of the type of units that we were in and the things that we had got going on. We really relied on each other. So he would help me out if I was out of town or gone TDY. He would watch my daughter. The same thing for him. If he went TDY, he had to leave town. I would watch his son. So we just had that. That was just kind of what we had going on. We were both there with our children by ourselves. Weekends we would travel, with the kids, go to different places and see something. So it was just a family orientation, just very natural. Yeah, just carried on.
Yeah, you guys were instant BFFs. It's interesting. I mean, it's true. And what's interesting about the two of you is that you have unique backgrounds when you're growing up. I know that growing up, for JaJuan, growing up in a city like Flint, Michigan, really stuck out to you. And then you also growing up in the South, but you've just been surrounded by diversity. So it really, I guess in that sense, it makes perfect sense that the two of you would find this common ground and be doing what you're doing. But, let's talk about Flint, Michigan. Growing up there, what was that like for you being in that neighborhood? What did you learn there and experience there that you carry forward with you here now as an adult, JaJuan? And then, Dr. Hall, if you could share a little bit about your upbringing, your current environment where you are in England and some of those things to really just for us all to hear how you got to where you are from your own individual personal life experiences that just seem to bring together in such a way that makes perfect sense for you both to be partnered doing what you're doing.
Yeah, for me, I'll keep it really succinct. Flint, while most people are associated with the water crisis, which is still going on, by the way, I always see it as a resilient people. It's a product of a resilient people. It taught me how to overcome obstacles and adapt to those adversities that occur within our lives. I'm extremely proud of where I come from. Even, you look at statistically speaking, Flint median household income is $29,000 per year, with a 38.77% poverty line. But regardless of that, the people from there are extremely resilient. We're agile learners, and that's the environment that kind of adapted me to DE&I, because the data tells one tale of diversity, but the stories, the diversity of thought, and other forms of DEI have always been prevalent in my life. And I credit Flint to a lot of that.
A family had looked out for me and took me in. I was 12 years old, and I had the neighborhood I was living in was all black neighborhood, but the family that moved in, well, they were already there. That took me in. They're from Samoa. So my mom's from the Amazons in Samoa. My pops was from America, Samoa. They took me in at a young age and just kind of looked out for me and gave me a lot of family values, which kind of led to, like JaJuan said, the cooking. It's funny, you ask any of our friends, any house I visit when I travel, that's what I do. I pull up, I'm cooking, doing dishes, watching, babysitting the kids. All our friends will tell you that. That's like my trademark. And, just an extension of family, because for me, my friends are my family, and to be honest. And so growing up in that type of environment, growing up with Samoan roots, traveling at a young age, writing, and I've been to 41 different countries. I lived in 16 different countries. I've worked with a lot of different foreign national groups. So just diversity has just kind of been part of my path. My wife is from Czech Republic. So, it's just diversity is everywhere. When I started teaching education, I started in United Kingdom over here at the University of Essex and Colchester Institute. And so, it's kind of just been my thing.
You've naturally been living diversity. And I love what you said earlier about taking action towards your gratitude. That's a big thing that I talk about. And I think that's a valuable lesson. It's not enough to say you're grateful, but take actions towards it.
Definitely.
So, let's talk about the actual formation of Muktube Lab, because you just mentioned a few things that you've been doing. You were a professor. I know that you've done some poetry, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about some of those things and the writing that you've done. And JaJuan, you've been, in the technology industry as a systems administrator and as an engineer, and these two things are very different, and they're different from each other. And then they're also different from Muktube Lab. So I'd like to hear what led you to the formation of Muktube Lab and for doing what you're doing and dedicating yourself to this mission as opposed to just continuing to do what you were doing.
So Maktub Limitless was a culmination of both my formal and informal education in the field, reading thousands or hundreds of articles, watching different presentations, reading reports, siphoning through the material that I learned from my certification courses. All that stuff helped me see how DEI can affect us in all four spheres of our life: personally, professionally, academically, civically. And the more I ingratiated myself in it, the more I saw it in everything. It's the analogy I like to use is as a Jeep Wrangler owner, right? I never really paid attention to Jeeps on the road. But once I got one, and with the Jeep Wrangler, you do the Jeep wave, I started seeing them everywhere. And that was the same thing with DE&I. I sit down at the table and I'm talking to my family. My 4-year-old daughter, she says something, and I'm thinking diversity, equity, inclusion. This is how this applies to her life. The media that I watch or intake, the TV shows that I may watch. Just driving down the street, listening to or being involved in my son's high school, all those things really showed to me how DEI is important and how it can be ingratiated within everything that we do. So regardless of the background that I come from, as far as the IT and everything else, the cultures are different from organization to organization, the people that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. And it just showed me how we can really start connecting as a unit as opposed to division.
Yeah, but so how did you know that you wanted to dedicate yourself? Like, what's the why behind why you're doing what you do? Like, how did you know that this was what you wanted to dedicate yourself to full time, as opposed to just something and continuing to do it? As you said, you were doing it with the training, with your coursework. And Dr. Hall, I'd love to hear from you next about how you decided that this was something you wanted to jump into and really focus on, as opposed to some of the other coursework and writing and things that you'd been up to.
For me, I think, I believe we have a purpose to serve, to unify, and to strive to reach our greatest potential. And when you incorporate those into your psyche and your thinking, then it also translates to DEI, because at a point you start speaking your truth in an enlightened manner, and it's a passageway to greater connectivity, to greater oneness, to greater unity. And that's what DEI does. It brings people together and it connects people. And so the paradox oftentimes exists between DEI being measured scientifically with the data, the statistics that back up how it's a great way to increase your business production, but it's also spiritual in nature from the standpoint that you're tapping into people's morals, their ethics, their values. And when you do that, you start tapping into the humaneness of it, that humane, those characteristics that are attributed to DEI, the respect, the dignity, the humaneness, the compassion, all those things are part of DEI. And that's something that I want to dedicate myself to.
For me, it's a lifestyle. Education has always been a lifestyle. Education has, it's saved my life, so when I was a kid, I went to a party. I grew up in the South, and especially in the 80s and 90s, it still was what it was, not as advanced as it is now. And I went to a party, and in an all-white neighborhood, and a fight broke out, and I intervened to separate the situation, and I walked the person home. And when I got back to the house, another fight had broke out, and the mom had asked me to go upstairs and get the phone. So when I went upstairs to get the phone, a police officer came in, and as I said, the type of environment that it was, that ensued, and it was a physical altercation on me, and I was only 14 years old. And when they were taking all of us away, a coach, Mike, pulled up. I remember this to this day. And he asked the officer, "What are you doing? Why do you have him?" And he said that, there's a fight going on. And he said, "Trust me, I'm telling you, he's not involved." And he said, "Just let me take him home. I know him." And he was a baseball coach. My friend played on his team. I didn't play, but he looked out for me. And in those situations like that happened over my life, really what that was is allyship. Using what you have available to you to benefit others. And, when I was a kid, I was never encouraged, because of the environment I grew in. I was never encouraged to go to school or told that that's something I would have. But here I am as I got older, and I took it upon myself to follow my own path. I was on my own by the time I was 17. I ended up getting 36 on my ACTs, 1590 on my SATs. Graduated with honors 4 times, and but that's something I had to come into on my own and myself. So having that life, I actually lived it without knowing I was living it. So when JaJuan offered me this opportunity as an educationalist, as a writer, I couldn't help but feel compelled, as this is something that I've been looking for a very long time, to be a part of something bigger than myself, so I could take my testimony, my experiences, as well as my intellect and my skill in allyship for other people. So I just feel like, for me, this is an extension of myself. This is a purpose. This is me giving back to the universe, as I was blessed and experienced a lot of the benefits that DEI offers that I have been going through since a child.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a strong purpose between the two of you in really doing this and seeing this through. What exactly is Maktub Limitless? What are the services that you provide? You mentioned education, and that's a big part of your path, Dr. Hall. And JaJuan, you have a lot of passion surrounding everything you see and seeing this everywhere. But what is it that you guys do?
From the education side, for me, it's what we do that I'm really proud of, and the way that we stand out is that we really brand an authentic DEI curriculum. We hear statistics, all the time. Statistics have been around. We've been known that there's been issues with diversity and inclusion. I mean, this is America, and that's all that needs to be said. But from our standpoint, we take actionable, reliable, creditable research rooted in psychology, and we educate starting at leadership, trickling down on the practices and the behaviors that are really affecting your business. Starting with leadership, making sure that you're leading from the front in the actions, the things that you say, the way that you carry yourself. People respond to that, and that affects people's psychological safety and the way they feel as far as their limits of safety to be themselves. So we offer those educational services with a diverse curriculum that is tailored specific to the needs of an organization based on the assessment of their organizational climate, which is crucial so that they can have the authentic results that they need to bolster their specific business.
Then furthermore, we provide guidance on ERG programs and mentorship programs, because when you start incorporating these within your organization, ERGs stand for employee resource groups, and they have different, or some people refer to it as affinity groups as well. But ERGs tap into specific demographics, whether it be racial, whether it be gender oriented, whether it be LGBTQIAPK plus communities, disabilities, etc. The list goes on and on. But with those ERG programs, you give people the instruments to be able to create those equitable measures, to be able to recruit and leverage the talent that you have on staff, to recruit other talent, and to serve in philanthropic opportunities. It's a gauntlet of things that ERGs are able to do. And then mentorship helps connect people, create those alliances, create those coalitions, give both the mentee and mentor opportunities for growth and development. So those are the things that we want to do from an ERG standpoint, from in a mentorship standpoint, as well as speaking engagements. And then we also want to be able to provide research, because what research does, it attacks the problem. And when you identify the problem, what the grassroots are, you're able to not necessarily eradicate it, but you are able to put an action towards it.
So DEI includes way more than just race. And you mentioned that it's race, it's gender, it's age. It's also thinking, right? I think you guys are really focused on innovative thinking and DEI within that, the language we use, and creating you mentioned earlier, psychological safety, sorry.
Definitely.
You mentioned earlier, psychological safety, first person language, right? That's something that, I'd love to touch on. And like you were just saying, JaJuan, the accountability of the organization and then the individuals within the organization. But also, we have some examples, and you guys have some great coaching about the accountability of the individual that may be experiencing a situation where they want to increase a little bit of awareness centered around DEI, whichever category they fit into.
Well, innovative thinking is essential for any business, for any organization of any type. You want to represent. You have to ask yourself a question. Does my organization represent the consumers that we provide a service for? And that requires innovative thinking. You're servicing a diverse community. Therefore, your thoughts and your approach and your strategy to your services must also reflect that diversity.
I think that sounds like it goes back to what you were saying earlier, JaJuan, about innovative thinking, but in the idea of innovative thinking in your hiring. So you may have a group of people that come from an institution like MIT, Stanford, you name it, that is recognized for their excellence, but then you want to mix that in with people from different schools that have a different idea or different mindset, so that they can then introduce different ideas and thoughts when problem solving, but as long as they're psychologically safe in that environment to do so. Am I getting that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And even a more poignant example, and it may be, do you watch Disney movies?
Yeah.
All right. So for those of you who do watch Disney movies, there's a movie called Meet the Robinsons. I find it to be an exceptional movie. From, again, as I ingratiated myself, I saw diversity, equity, inclusion, everything, right? But within this movie, just give you a brief synopsis. It's a kid, he's an inventor, he goes into the future, and he meets this family that's full of eclectic and diverse people. I mean, you're talking about which you would deem monsters, superheroes that deliver pizza. The head of the household, she teaches how frogs how to sing. Just an eclectic bunch of people. But this peanut butter and jelly machine jams up, and he's terrified to invent it because he's an orphan as well. So he had a traumatic experience in the past when dealing with that. And when he fixes the machine, it fails miserably. And that traumatic experience automatically comes back to him. But they encourage it. They're celebrating because they said, you failed. That means you're going to learn from this experience. And so that's what in a nutshell, that's what psychological safety can provide to individuals. And I know it's a different way of looking at it, but it still holds true, and the value is therein.
Yeah, I think that leads into something else that you guys focus on as well, is first person language and being able to speak to people, not because of the person that wears the blue jacket or, this type of person or that person, but actually the person as an individual, because I think that's one thing that you guys focus on is the idea that you don't know what their past are and what you may be bringing up based on their past experience. Like in this example, the peanut butter and jelly, if you didn't have that frame of reference and you responded to him in a different way, that could have had a different outcome where you would have been robbed of the opportunity of him to invent that machine.
Absolutely. It's imperative that we use people first oriented language and not base it on their descriptors. What you are is the way you present yourself and the things that you do, but who you are is the person that lies underneath all that, your feelings, your attitudes, your values. And that's the whole person concept. And that lends itself into those behavioral elements that are present within a person, the mindset, the decisions, the skill set, the relationships. And the only way to figure that out and to find that out about people is through interpersonal communication. You have to talk to people. That's one of the premises and one of the objectives of DE&I is to have channels for transactional communication, i.e. open discussions based on people's experiences and insights. But that's how you elicit those innovative ideals. That's how you build those alliances and build strategic partnerships. Because our old way of thinking is the golden rule. And most people know what the golden rule is. Treat others how you want to be treated. Well, that's out the window. That's passé. The new thing is platinum rule. Treat others as they want to be treated. So when you put a person first language in front of it, and instead of a person with, instead of saying they have a birth defect, they have a cognitive disability. Things like that helps establish that this person is not defined by what they are, but you have to see who they are. And the only way you figure that out is through that interpersonal communication.
So, and I think that goes to, the other thing that you guys really coach up very well is accountability. And that's on both sides. It's not just with the organization, it's not with the group, but it's also with the individual.
Yeah, accountability is extremely important. When we look at accountability, starting with leadership, I kind of take it back to when you look at family. I always say that when we look at the structural, foundational building blocks, of schema of information that we experience in life, how we develop our personalities and everything that we inherit, it starts with three factors: our family, our communities, and our schools. And as you grow, you look at most people in typical families, whatever the father or the mother does, the children usually follow suit after. In the same way, whatever the older kids are doing, the younger the kids in the neighborhood want to do. And in school, whatever the teachers are modeling and what they feel is important, students are trying to live up to that expectation. And then as such, it's the same in an organization. People at the lower levels are trying to exemplify themselves after the behavior characteristics of their boss, of management, because that's where they aspire to be one day. So accountability starting at the top, realizing that people are watching you, people are studying you without you even knowing that they are, and they're paying attention to the energy that you give off, the words that you use, how you address people, how you respond to situations. Are you inclusive and welcoming, inviting, and to having people be a part of the organizational pulse that pushes the agenda to achieve the bottom line? So starting with leadership, being accountable, knowing that you're being watched, just like a parent, knowing that our children are always watching everything that we do. And then as it trickles down to middle level management and then lower level management and supervisory roles, being accountable at every section. Everybody's position is vital to the success of the organization. It's an organization, as we say in business, as an organism. No matter how small the body part is, if something does not function properly, it affects the whole chain, our whole process of everything that we do. And as such, everyone is equally as important, equally as important. Without the mailman being accountable for his position within the company, then we're not getting that correspondence across. The same thing, without the person handling their responsibilities in the finance and accounting area, then funding is not getting allocated when it needs to be and how it needs to be, which then can stifle projects that are waiting on funding to procure resources that they need to continue to push the line. Accountability can be seen everywhere, from the top all the way to the bottom. And it's important that our leaders within an organization expresses that, number one, by showing fallibility, that they are not perfect. It's an old saying by Samuel Beckett. If you ever tried and failed, doesn't matter. Try again, fail again, try again, and fail better. And accountability does that. It is honest, it is truthful, it is respectful, it's humbling, and it invites people to fail better. Be risk takers. Don't be scared to take a chance. Be accountable for your actions. Own it all from the top to the bottom.
Yeah, absolutely. And to echo those sentiments, when it comes to accountability, I always think back to one of the first things I learned from my first college professor, who told me that no matter how old he got, he was going to always enroll in some kind of course, because he felt it was his responsibility to grow and develop, to continue to fire off those brain synapses for the next generation that comes about. And so through, I guess, the evolutionary process, he wanted to make sure he was doing his part. Now, with that being said, we're accountable for always growing and developing. Introspection in this field, or in everything that we do in all four spheres of our life, is critical. It's like Dr. Hall said, we claim to be fallible, but how many of us are willing to check our egos at the door when we're addressed with those things that we fall short on? It's not that we should give up and have the mindset that, you know what, that's just a part of who I am, so that's how I'll be. But it's to grow and continue to grow and develop. So our egos can motivate us, but it also can be a stumbling block to our humaneness. And through self-evaluation, it involves an intimate examination of our values and philosophy of life in a heuristic approach. And it illuminates our dogmatic ways of thinking, otherwise what's known as selective perception, to continue to play our conscious and unconscious, as we only notice the things that confirm our initial positions. And with that, I always think of, I also think of a Latin term, and it goes, "Ques ipsos custodiates ipsos custodes," which means who watches the watcher, or who guards the guardian. We are ultimately responsible for ourselves, our actions, our thoughts, our unconscious, subconscious, and everything else. So we have to be the guardians of our own thoughts and our ideology. And when we do that, and we put our ego in check, we oftentimes elicit an environment of inclusiveness. And when you go further and you look at those introspective ideals, we have something what I refer to as moral indebtedness. And it's an article written by Orson Welles in a 1943 Free World magazine that illustrates that and touches on that. And I know we're getting short on time, so I'll close with this. In that article, Orson Welles talks about what he defines as freedom. And he's introspective in his thoughts as he flies on the plane over various states that have repressed voting rights for people, and it costs them. As he's dining in a restaurant where racially Black people aren't allowed to eat, but they can serve. And at the same time, he overhears a man talking about the suppression of Jews. So within that article, it goes like this. I want to kind of read some things from it. He says, to be born free is to be born in debt. To live in freedom without fighting slavery is to profiteer. I believe I owe the very profit I make to the people I make it from. This is a debt payable in service and the highest efforts of the debtor. A healthy person owes to the sick all that they can do for them. An educated person owes to the ignorant all that they can do for them. A free person owes to the world slaves all that they can do for them. And what is to be done is more, much more than good works, Christmas baskets, bonuses, and tips, and bread, and circuses. There is only one thing to be done with slaves: freedom. Now, with that being said, in relation to DEI, freedom to experience a true sense of belonging predicated on individuals being their authentic self and feeling valued by others speaks to inclusivity. Freedom revolving around equitable measures and opportunities speaks to the equity. Freedom for diversity be seen as a valuable asset beyond a multitude of measured outcomes, but as a connection of people and oneness. That speaks to diversity. And this can be applied to all 4 spheres of our life. And that helps us reach our unlimited potential, for it is written.
Yeah, comes back full circle. That's
Absolutely.
why that name stuck out so much to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, guys, this has been a great discussion, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions and answers coming up soon. But for anyone who wants to reach out to you about your coursework or get in touch with you to talk about some of the custom outlines that you guys can do, how do they reach Maktub Limitless?
You can go to our website, www.maktublimitless, that's MaktubLimitless.com. And we have a contact page where you can submit your request or submit an inquiry, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.
All right, so that's Maktub Limitless, altogether one word.com.
Correct.
What about your social channels? Do you guys on Facebook, Instagram? How can they connect with you?
Same for Twitter, and we have additional content coming on YouTube as well.
All right, so www.maktublimitless, all one word.com.
Correct.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate you being here. And don't forget to stay tuned for Did You Know? Before we go, let's talk about Did You Know? Did you know mentorship programs can boost the representation of racially Black, Hispanic, Asian American women, and Hispanic and Asian American men at manager levels from 9 to 24%, resulting in a reported 67% increase in productivity. Studies show that diverse management teams are 33% more likely to generate better than average profits, are 70% more likely to capture new markets, and generate 19% more revenue from innovation than companies with below average leadership diversity. 48% of employees surveyed believe that respect is the most essential factor in an inclusive culture. In addition, 54% of employees surveyed feel disrespected by leadership in the work environment. We hope you enjoyed today's program and look forward to seeing you at the next one. Visit nvtc.org for more information.
We look forward to seeing you at next month's Let's Talk Tech with NVTC. In the meantime, follow us at Nova Tech Council on Twitter and LinkedIn, and remember to sign up for the latest tech news at nvtc.org.